Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Cardfellas Podcast Show. I'm Matt. He's Chris. Don't adjust your clocks or your calendar. It is Thursday. It is 11 p.m. We are live, and we're just going to kind of throw these out every once in a while when we can. Our schedules get busy, so we just decided let's go live tonight. So hopefully you guys are tuning in, enjoying this, and if you're hearing us on the podcast, thanks for tuning in. Like I said, normally we go live Wednesday at 10:30. It is Thursday at 11. We're going live, so here we are, Chris.
Yeah, things getting wild. It's the end of summer, and that's just kind of the way it's gone for a lot of people. People are trying to squeeze in one last vacation before school starts and just kind of finishing things up. So unfortunately, just the last few weeks have been tough for us to do that. Last night I was able to go and check out a Minnesota Twins game, which was a lot of fun. Played the Red Sox and went into the bottom of 9. Twins had 2 guys on, down by 1, and promptly hit into a double play. But
you made it the whole game, though.
Yeah, I stayed for the whole thing. It was really fun. It was a great environment last night. Just a fun game to go to. So I enjoyed it. It was good to be there, and that meant I missed the live broadcast, but we're back today, and we're going to be talking a little football, a little 2012 Panini Prizm Football, and first year of Prizm Football, kind of the beginning of the end for Topps. But yeah, this became a thing in 2012. 300 card set, 200 veterans, 100 rookie cards in the set.
Yeah, as we flip the calendar to September, it is the boys of fall now. The football season about to start here. You're wrapping up the baseball season, so we thought let's talk about football. Let's talk about what's really become the flagship kind of product for football right now is Prizm, and it is in high demand. It will, I think, continue to be in high demand for a while, just because I think like I said, it's become the flagship. It's been around since 2012, and that's the reason we wanted to talk about this set. This was the first year of Prizm. This kind of kicked it off. And the unique thing about this was, obviously we know what Prizm looks like now. It has that chromanium look to it, that more upscale design and look, much like Topps Chrome. So I think that's why people gravitated towards it. And, then the biggest thing with these sets too, and they really, you're starting to see it more and more, are the parallels. And so there was more than just the base cards that you got out of these sets. And that's really why I think people have continued to gravitate towards Prizm, and why Prizm continues to be the quote unquote flagship of the hobby. And when it comes out, people definitely gravitate towards them, and they get them off the shelves pretty darn quick.
Yeah, it goes quick. The values are usually pretty good. It'll be interesting, though. I think people are really, when it comes to football, Optic is really becoming a thing. And we're not going to talk about Optic tonight, but I think Optic is one of those things. If you talk to people today and you had a Prizm box and an Optic box sitting right next to it, I think a lot of people really would go for the Optic. But either way, tonight we're talking Prizm. 2012 Prizm, again, first year of this product. Currently seeing retail boxes. This is a hobby box you see on your screen, but retail boxes going for about $750 to $1,000. That retail box had 24 packs in it, 4 cards in a pack, so 96 total cards, and 1 auto per box. The hobby box, as far as I'm concerned, I think they're pretty overpriced on eBay right now. You're seeing a lot of them. I think the cheapest buy it now is $2,800. One recently sold at auction for $1,500. The hobby boxes are 20 packs of 6 cards with 2 autos per box. You also had some kind of inserts and subsets in those hobby boxes as well. You get 2 autos. You get 1 Brilliance, 1 Decade Dominance, 1 Rookie Impact, a couple other inserts, in one of those red die cut Prizms. That's one of the parallels, and then 3 other Prizms in a hobby box. So if you're searching for those, parallel cards, the hobby box is going to be where it's at. But again, right now, I think people still may have those 2021 prices on those boxes because they're probably, at the prices that they're trying to get them for on the buy it now overpriced. But there was a recent auction for $1,500. There's an auction going on right now on eBay for a hobby box as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on how that goes.
This one we can put in the category of La La Land. You and I have been talking a lot about prices that are ridiculous, and we're going to start a segment on here, like, exposing some of the La La Land prices, and this is definitely in that category. The raw cards are a little bit more affordable, but getting back to the set before we get into the specific cards and the players who are in this, 300 cards in this set, 100 of them are rookies. And you got a rookie card in every pack, as far is what I understand. So when you say that there's 20 packs in a box, you're going to get 20 rookie cards. The rookie class was, I would say, not bad. There's some potential Hall of Famers in there, and future Hall of Famers from a rookie standpoint. The cards themselves, Prizm really hasn't changed their designs as much over the years. It stayed pretty standard. I would say they've improved them a little bit, but this was a pretty simple design. You had your silver border. It's a shiny card, so it's going to stand out. But you had a nice photo. But the thing that I found interesting was the Prizm logo was like massive, and it was like, it was almost as big. It was bigger than the actual logo of the team that the person played for, and it was essentially bigger than the name. We have a picture up on the screen right now for those of you listening to us on our podcast, and it's a card that I pulled for this show. It's Randy Moss in a San Francisco 49ers uniform, which I had completely forgotten he had played for them, and I thought it was an error card for a second. But then this one is actually a silver Prizm card. You can tell it has a little bit more shine to it, but it's got him running a route. Nice big picture. And then you had this border with kind of those little I don't even know how to describe them, Chris, like little bubbles. I just know them from the Prizm basketball with Zion Williamson. Those are the kind of design around it, and this like little inner border as well. But that's kind of the design that they've used and they've continued to use over the years. So they're not really revolutionizing their design every year. So what they started with in 2012, they're kind of continuing on with 2021, 2022. And if you like the front of the card, Chris, you're going to like the back of the card just as much, because they just took the same picture and cut it off at the waist. So, talk about maximizing the pictures that you have and squeezing the juice out of that orange, if you will. But really simple design in the back. I actually like the back. You have one line of stats is kind of the new standard, then kind of a little blurb about the player. And the Prizm cards were designated, if you see in the bottom left, for those of you listening on the podcast, you can't see this, but it does have a Prizm designation, so you know that it is a special parallel. And other than that, Chris, pretty standard back of a card.
Yeah, us old guys appreciate that they put Prizm on the back. And, my buddy Oswald, he's got a saying, and it goes really well here. Like you said, the design hasn't changed much. The front and the back are the same. He always says, you've seen one, you've seen them both. And that's pretty much what you've got right here. You've seen one, you've seen them both, kind of the same thing with both these cards. Robert Griffin III featured on the box. RG3 and Andrew Luck were kind of the two big rookies that people were looking for when they were going out to the store to buy these. Guy that flew under the radar was a guy out of Wisconsin, Russell Wilson. Wasn't a lot of hype surrounding him, but he actually became the Hall of Famer out of the group. Everybody was looking at RG3. Everybody was excited about Andrew Luck. This is a really, really interesting time in the NFL. The previous year in the league saw the 4-seed New York Giants knock off the heavily favored New England Patriots for the second time in the Super Bowl in 5 years. They knocked them off 5 years earlier. That was the year that the Patriots were undefeated. But probably the biggest spectacle in the NFL season, that 2011 leading into this year, was Tebow Mania. Tim Tebow guided the Broncos to an 8-8 record, barely made the playoffs, but they beat Pittsburgh in that playoff game, dramatic win, overtime win. Tebow throwing it over the top for the touchdown. And the Broncos faithful really giddy with possibilities at the end of that year, thinking, hey, we got something with this Tim Tebow guy. But little did they know, about, 1,000 miles to the east, The Indianapolis Colts, they had suffered that injury with Peyton Manning, and the Colts were in full-on suck for luck mode, and kind of, threw the season away. Got the number 1 pick so they would get Andrew Luck, and a lot of people didn't know if Peyton Manning was even going to play football again.
Right.
John Elway rolled the dice, went and picked up Manning. The Broncos would end up with the most prolific offense in NFL history. The Broncos would go to the Super Bowl twice and win one, and Indy never made it back to the Super Bowl after they let Peyton go. So very pivotal seasons there leading into this 2012 year. In 2012, it was the Baltimore Ravens and Ray Lewis defeating Colin Kaepernick and the 49ers, and that was the year that Super Bowl the lights went out at the Superdome in New Orleans. The Harbaugh brothers were coaching against each other. Jim Harbaugh for the Niners and John Harbaugh for the Ravens. Jim would go back home to Michigan a couple years later. John Harbaugh still coaching in the NFL. So that's kind of what was happening in the NFL at the time. It was really kind of I think, very interesting time.
It was an interesting time, and to hear that recap again, which you do so well, it really reminds you of kind of the expectations with some of the names that you brought up. Andrew Luck was considered the next great quarterback, not just for the Colts, but for the NFL. And he really was onto something going forward. Like he was, and then he, of course, retired early and just said, I'm done with this. My career, my life, my livelihood, my health, I should say, is more important than me. And he walked away from the game. And so you eliminate him from the mix. RG3 looked like he was something that was going to be so special and so unique, and just his style of play, just it was almost too reckless for him to stay healthy. And so he was out of the league. And like you said off the top, the person that ended up having the best career out of the rookies was Russell Wilson. And this set was unique because there were a couple Russell Wilson variables. So you see this one it's his rookie card, and it looks like a base card, but there's one that has it's called towel up. So you see the towel on his hip is kind of pointing up. And so that one is a shorter print rookie card of his. And I'll get into the pop report. And then now we're looking at one where it's a towel down. And that one is the more common one. So there were a couple rookie cards of Russell Wilson. And he turned out to be, as Chris mentioned, on a trajectory to be a Hall of Famer, and just signed a massive contract with Denver, who, again, went and got a aging quarterback, and hopefully can potentially lead him to, or the Broncos to another Super Bowl. And that just kind of caused all this ripple effect. Because you remember Russell Wilson was a third-round pick, I believe. He was a third-round pick. They had just paid, I'm going to say Seattle paid a ton of money for Matt Flynn.
Yep.
Right? Is that what it was? That was the scenario, too.
Yeah,
they traded
for him
because he had just come off this exceptional Week 17 performance for the Packers, where he actually set some Packer passing records, which is a story for another day. And then the Seahawks wanted him, and then Russell Wilson came into camp and beat him out. And everybody's like, whoa. And from there, Russell Wilson's legacy was set. So Russell Wilson is the class of this rookie class. Now, there were other guys in there too. And I think, coming from being from Minnesota and watching a lot of Minnesota Vikings football, and maybe people don't really understand this or know this very much, but the other guy that could be a Hall of Famer is that guy you're seeing on your screen. And for those of you listening on the podcast, Harrison Smith, Hitman Harry, he has a potential to be a Hall of Famer. He's put together a really nice, long career of sustained, solid play. And he's been a all-star, a Pro Bowler, all-pro for many years. And just kind of quietly, steadily had a really, really strong career. So he's coming down to the end of his career, but he's a guy who many people believe has already punched his ticket to Canton. Maybe not a first balloter, but he will eventually get there. And I will have to say, being from Minnesota and watching the Vikings, I would have to agree. And staying with the Minnesota theme, there was another guy in this draft too, Kirk Cousins. Remember this?
You like that?
And you like that? And so you remember this year too, Chris, which you didn't mention in your little recap. There was RG3 and Kirk Cousins were drafted in the same draft, right? Like they were first and a third round picks, which everybody was like, what is happening in Washington? Like it was unheard of. I mean, it still is unheard of to draft a first and a third round quarterback in the same draft. But what ended up happening was it turned out to be a pretty good deal for Washington because RG3 got hurt and Kirk Cousins was able to step in and play some pretty significant, years in Washington before, of course, coming to Minnesota, where he is now the, undisputed quarterback there without any competition. So, and signed some pretty nice contracts along the way. We can go back and look at the contracts of these quarterbacks that we're talking about. Kirk did pretty darn well for himself. That's for sure.
Yeah, Kirk's one of those guys that he doesn't make too many highlight shows, but at the end of the year, when you add up all those statistics, he usually looks pretty good at the end of the season. He usually takes a look and goes, "You like that?"
He does.
So he
and he's played in the little nuances that maybe people don't. I'm going to tell you this. I'm just going to say this. I don't think many people pay attention to Minnesota Vikings football, and I'm going to tell you why. I saw a lot of people bidding on Kellen Mond stuff, and if anybody would have been bidding on Kellen Mond stuff in my circles, I would have told them they're crazy because Kellen Mond was not a guy the Vikings were ever going to invest in, and he just got cut. But there were a lot of people. But what I'm saying about Kirk Cousins here is he's played for a different offensive coordinator basically every year he's been in Minnesota. And so he is he gets a lot of flack here for not being the guy. But, man, this guy has dealt with a lot of adversity in his professional career. He's dealt with Mike Zimmer, who's a defensive first coach, who really – speculation is didn't like Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, I think, has a situation right now with Kevin O'Connell and the new regime here in Minnesota that Kirk Cousins could be a guy whose card you might want to invest in. That's kind of my thoughts right now. I don't know. I think Kirk is onto something here that could be something that pushes him, like you said, just kind of ahead of where he was and a little bit more notoriety. I don't know if the Vikings roster is good enough to get them over the hump, but I think you're going to see a different Kirk Cousins this year.
All right. Well, they're definitely, I think, for guys like Harrison Smith, for his resume, and really for Kirk Cousins' resume, I think these guys are going to have to make it to the next step when it comes to playoff success because they just haven't done it. So I think if they can do something in the playoffs, then I think maybe we can definitely have that discussion. But another guy that, doesn't get a lot of play, and certainly, in the first 3 or 4 years of his career, I don't think anyone was really expecting much from him, is Ryan Tannehill. Came in out of Texas A&M, went to the Dolphins, and was middling there, and fell into a great situation in Tennessee. They've gone deep into the playoffs a couple different times. So his rookie card was in this set as well. And I think now is like one of the more valuable cards in the set. And again, he's not a household name, but he's a guy that if you are a Titans fan, he's your guy.
Yeah. And I agree. I don't think he's a household name, and I don't think he's going to be the guy that's going to, really move a lot of needles, even if he does, let's say, make it all the way to a Super Bowl or eventually. Just the way Tennessee plays, he's kind of in that same mold of like Nick Foles. I mean, those guys that have won a Super Bowl, but maybe just everything aligned right for him. Trent Dilfer, guys like that. I don't think he's ever going to be a guy that, maybe is going to win you a Super Bowl, but he's not maybe going to lose to the point where you call him a detriment, if you will. But these guys, when we look at this 2012 draft class, these guys are getting up there in age. too. They're getting in there in their early to middle 30s, and so it's now or never for a lot of these guys. And I think Ryan Tannehill's definitely in that. It has to happen pretty quick, because I don't see him being a guy who, all of a sudden at 35, 36 starts being a different player.
For sure.
And so I think, but you're right though. I mean, he found rebirth in Tennessee, and so did his cards. There were a lot of people going through their collections looking for Ryan Tannehill Miami Dolphins cards, saying, "Oh man, these cards are all of a sudden worth something." So, those are always fun when that happens, and he's definitely one of those guys.
Well, let's go through. Now we're looking at some base cards. Here's Tom Brady. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. Base card Tom Brady, and then you got Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah,
a guy named Peyton Manning. What's kind of funny is, first Prizm cards are a thing. Like, this was the first year Prizm. It's a thing. I mean, the Tom Brady base card, I just looked it up right before the show. The last one that sold raw, Tom Brady 2012 Prizm base card, sold for $24 on eBay.
Yeah.
That's
not his rookie, obviously,
right.
Several years into his career. So, it's not like it's even a second year card, but it's a new card. It's the first of Brady in that type of card. And like we mentioned, and the other than those rookies, Luke Kuechly, T.Y. Hilton, Fletcher Cox, those are some other guys that were rookies in this class that had good long careers, but again, not guys that are going to move the needle. And you showed Chris the Aaron Rodgers and the Peyton Manning cards, and I think one of the unique things about this set, and the reason that I really wanted to talk about, is I didn't know much about it, and it was kind of in that dead era of collecting for me. Definitely kind of out of sight, out of mind, wasn't paying attention, and I don't see a lot of these cards either out in the wild. That's the thing that I always like to look at when we do these sets. Am I seeing these cards a lot? Where am I seeing these cards? If I saw these cards, would they grab my attention? Mm-hmm. And that kind of this set in this kind of era, of like 2012 to about 2017, 18, like I feel like it's kind of that era of I don't know where those cards are because I don't see them very often.
Yeah, I think that's the case. And you and I were talking earlier this week. I saw the PSA reveal video you put out, and you had, I think, a 2003 Kobe Bryant card, and I just thought it just had real clean lines, really just a super looking card. And I texted you and I go, I think that like that 2000 to 2010 era of sports cards is really underrated. That might be like the best time, even though you and I were not really in the hobby at that time. But if you look at those designs, we did a show earlier this year on the 2008 top set, but maybe it's 2000 to 2015, and those were years that at least people from our generation were not collecting. We were busy out running around and kind of starting our lives with our families and getting married and all those kind of things. And just, we weren't into collecting, but you go back and you look at those cards and you're like, these are just super interesting looking, great designs. And like you said, you just don't see a lot of those cards just out in the wild. Typically right now when we go to a show, we're seeing a lot of vintage, we're seeing a lot of junk wax, we're seeing a lot of the last 3 years.
Yes.
So like that 2000 to 2015 era, I don't want to say it's hard to find, but it's definitely harder to find. You have to go looking for those things.
You do. And I think that's what makes this interesting. And that's what brings a little bit more value to these cards than maybe there should be. When you kind of look at it, like when you show those cards, like that Peyton Manning card of him in a Broncos uniform, and that card has nothing to do with anything other than it's Peyton Manning. And when I say that, I mean, it's not a rookie card. It's not an auto. It's nothing. It's just a regular base card. But if I'm a Peyton Manning collector, I'm buying this card. Even if I'm not a Peyton Manning collector and I'm a fan of, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, this is a card that I feel like I should be targeting. And Chris, you and I say this all the time. Whenever we do these shows and we start doing research, we end up like wanting to buy these cards. And this set is one of those that I definitely found myself kind of gravitating towards. And I was looking at, PSA 9s. The PSA 9s in these cards are actually, some of them are cheaper than the actual raw cards that are being sold. So I mean, there's some potential, there's some potential value here that I think over the long run, if you held on to these and you like the player that you're buying, I think you can definitely do well as far as a profit or at least holding their value over time.
Yeah, it's that first Prism market. And I think, like you say, people are kind of rolling the dice trying to go for 10. So there's a lot of value in buying that 9. And, we're going to assume that Prism is going to continue to be a popular thing. And if it is, having the first Prism card of Peyton Manning, the first Prism card of him being in a Broncos uniform, it was his first year with the Broncos, Peyton Manning collectors are going to want to buy that card just because of who it is, what he's wearing, and it's the first Prism card.
Yeah.
You brought up PSA. I brought up PSA. Do you want to go into some of the PSA numbers from this set?
Yeah, and this really speaks to what we were talking about too. I mean, this of this whole set, and this includes some of the parallels as well. There's only been 7,100 cards graded, and so when you think about that, there's a 300 card set, base set, and then there's all those parallels. You have the red parallels, the green parallels, the prisms, the golds. I mean, you have all these different variations. So all told, 7,100 cards have been graded, and the gem rate's about 50%. You're at about 3,100, 3,200 are 10s, and then 3,300 are 9s. So that tells you, Chris, that all of the bad publicity that Prizm and Panini has gotten this year, and I've seen a lot of people really upset with the quality control. This was not the case back in the 2012 era of cards. There was a lot of cards getting graded and getting 9s and 10s. So if you are looking at this from a raw perspective, the likelihood of you getting at least a 9 is pretty high. Obviously, of course, depending on where the cards were stored, but just looking at those raw numbers, 9s and 10s were very common. We mentioned the Russell Wilson towel down. Which one is that's the more common one? That one has been graded at 1,056 times, with 578 of those 10s and 413 of those 9s. A 10 for the towel down recently went for a 500, a 9 for about 200. And then this one is the towel up. And this is the one when I'm talking about the towel up, it's the towel on his hip, the one that he uses kind of to wipe his hands before he throws a football. There was only 194 of this one graded, and only 64 10s. And so that's the towel up one, the one you're seeing on your screen. If you're listening to us on the podcast, is a great picture of Russell Wilson. And again, it's just on his left hip, and the towel is kind of pointing upward. He's kind of running away, I would assume. It looks like it's kind of flowing in the wind. Only 64 10s of that, 112 9s. So that's about $1,000 card in a PSA 10. It's about 250 in a 9. So that's the one to get if you're a Russell Wilson collector and really committed to getting all of his rookie cards. The second most graded card after the Wilson cards is Tom Brady. He's at 959 graded cards. 381 are 10s, 483 are 9s. And then here, Chris, this is kind of reminds me when I was looking at this number. Get back to the Brady. $250 for a PSA 10 Brady. About $100 for a 9. But this next one, this is the fourth most graded card because Rodgers actually is ahead of him. But Andrew Luck, a lot of people got his card graded. 316 of his were graded. And it got me thinking about like the Fernando Tatis people who have collected his cards, and the thought of just, having an Andrew Luck PSA 10 rookie card at one time was probably really, really appealing. And I can imagine there's a lot of people who put money into, getting those cards graded, thinking they had a better value than they did. A PSA 10 just sold for $20. A PSA 10 sold for $20. So, a lot can happen in that time. Peyton Manning is another one that's up there. Drew Brees' card, we didn't show that, but that's up there. The Ryan Tannehill, as you mentioned. Rob Gronkowski, again, not a rookie card or anything for him, but that card is graded over 100 times. Kirk Cousins, Ben Roethlisberger, and then Cam Newton. So, Chris, it kind of just shows you, again, if you're going to collect, and you are collecting, guys, it's really, really important to collect quarterbacks, especially quarterbacks who are going to the Hall of Fame. That's really that's the thing we learned for football. And I've tried to explain that to my son, and he's into card collecting, and he's looking at guys. He really likes Derrick Henry. He's like, Derrick Henry's going to have this awesome year. He's going to break this record and break that record. I'm like, people don't collect running backs. People don't over the long run. Maybe they do in spurts, but go for quarterbacks. Find quarterbacks and spend your money on quarterbacks, because those are the guys who, over the long term, are the ones that are going to be in the most demand, because I think those are the most recognizable. And, with that said, I know there are other skill position guys and other players that do get the notoriety, but, this just shows, again, we're looking at, 8 or 9 of the top 12 are quarterbacks. So,
yeah, one of the things that was interesting that you said, and it made me do a quick search while you were talking, was the quality control and how much better, the 2012 cards are to now. And I was sitting here thinking, well, maybe it's a good buy, instead of going out and buying a 2021 hobby box of Prizm, to buy a 2012 box of Prizm. How do they compare in price? And the one that sold at auction, the 2012 box at auction, recently sold for $1,525. And 2021 boxes are currently selling for right about that same number. Mm-hmm. So maybe you go that way. But then I went, well, listen, you buy a hobby box, you're only getting 120 cards. You're only getting 20 rookies. You got a 1 in 5 shot at getting a Russell Wilson. Here's my advice. Don't buy either one of them.
Buy the Wilson, towel down, towel up. That's
right.
Your $1,500 right there.
Yeah.
I think that's your better value. I just, but you and I played a little bit more safe. But I don't know how much more ceiling Russell Wilson has. I think Russell Wilson has a really, really high potential to do really good things in Denver. And if he does go to the Super Bowl, clearly that's something that will increase his value. But I also know that Russell Wilson is a very polarizing figure. And there's a lot of people that just don't like him, personally, just by the way he acts. They don't think he's, real, or he has this, persona about him that just is there for marketing. But say what you will, on the field, the guy's a good football player. And now he's in a really good position with Denver. And I could see him, really doing some good things this year. So yeah. I'm with you. If you're hunting for Russell Wilson, I just buy his card. Just buy, just go buy it graded. But I know it's a gamble, and people like to gamble with unopened boxes. And if you have the money to do it, and it's not going to, prevent food from being put on your table, or a roof over your head, by all means, rip away.
Yeah. I don't know, Matt. I think I've said all I need to say about the set. Do you have anything else?
I don't. I think we're ready to put a bow on it. Again, normally we're on Wednesday nights at 10:30, but then, you know what? We're going to bounce around a little bit. Chris and I have been talking a little bit too about, what can we do to, make sure we have new content coming out. So we're going to introduce some new things. I mentioned it earlier. We're seeing a lot of people overpricing their products, and we're going to start. I don't want to say the word. I don't want to use the word exposing it, but we in the hobby, we want to make sure that everybody understands. This is not 2021. We're not in the middle of the pandemic. We don't have handout money. people aren't just sitting around. So we need to start pricing stuff realistically. And so, maybe it's time we start looking at some of the things where things should be priced. And, this was brought up many times, whether Chris, you and I were at a hobby shop or whether it's a Facebook marketplace ad. So, we're going to look for some new content to share with everyone. And hopefully you guys enjoyed this broadcast. If you get us on podcast, wherever you get your podcast, please give us a review. Let us know how we're doing. We'd love to hear from you there. If you're on YouTube, give us a comment. Let us know what you think about the 2012 Prizm. Let us know what you're collecting and what you're seeing with the Prizm. Because I know there's a lot of people who are collecting Prizm. And, Chris, one of the things you mentioned at the top of the show, and it's an interesting debate, is the optic versus Prizm. I'd love to hear what people think. It's interesting you brought that up because optic has I have not seen any optic mega boxes or blaster boxes out there in the wild as far as like on target.com, but I saw they have 14 card cellos for optic still on, I don't know, maybe it was 12 card cellos for $14.99 on Target. And I still think they're there. And one thing that I noticed a couple weeks ago was they had Prizm cellos on there as well, and those sold out almost immediately. So I don't know if they just have more optic or they just had fewer Prizm, but that kind of showed me that Prizm is the one that's in the highest demand based on what's available on target.com. But I have two orders coming of optics. My son ordered 3 fat packs or 3 cello packs, and he said he's already opening them. He said, I'm not keeping them, I'm opening them. So we'll get a chance to see what he has in store for optic. He also bought a blaster box, retail blaster box of Prizm, and I will tell you, he spent $48 and probably got 50 cents worth of cards. The cards were putrid. So he is soured on Prizm. I will tell you that. So he's looking forward to opening up something different. So maybe I can convince him to show what he pulls on the show. But interesting tests coming up here for us.
Yeah,
but
looking forward to that.
Yeah, we'll continue to put content out there. But thanks everybody for watching. Look for our shows live whenever we decide to pop on, and look for our videos whenever we find content that we feel is worthy of sharing. But thank you, everybody, for watching us on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for listening to us on the podcast. We will see you next time. We are the Cardfellas.